Good morning everyone, Christina Barnes here from Stamping. How are you all going today? Okay, so it's Tuesday and I am going to share with you 3 cards today using the Night of Flight. Sorry, I had to think about the name of that one. The Night of Flight stamp set, which is a host set, but it's just so gorgeous. I loved it. You could, of course, use another butterfly stamp set, but this one is lovely. I am coming from the beautiful Bega Valley in Australia, and it's just an absolutely glorious winter's day today. Beautiful blue skies and the sun's out for a change. We've had very cold and wintry weather, but today the sky is about that colour. Yeah, it's lovely. Beautiful day. Alright, I am going to, let's see if I can make you a little bit less motion sick today. I'm just going to cover the camera over as I turn it over, and then we'll get to stamping and I'll show you what we're going to do today. Okay, how's that looking? Alrighty. Okay. Oops, bit too far there. Alright, hopefully you can see okay. Alright, so this is the Night of Flight stamp set. As I said, gorgeous, gorgeous. It's so lovely and so many ideas for me. As soon as I saw this one, I thought, oh yeah, I've just got to have that. So it is a host set, so it's right at the back of the annual catalogue. I think it's page 172, I think. And so to get this one, you need to have orders of $250 or over. But yeah, I loved it. Okay, so that's what we're going to use today. And I'm only going to use a couple of the butterfly images, but I don't know, are they moths or butterflies? Anyway, the first card we're going to make is this one here. This is a design, really simple. It's just one layer of thick white cardstock, and the design idea came from Martin from Martin's Mayhem. Martin is a demonstrator in the UK, so if you haven't come across him, he's definitely worth checking out his amazing stuff. But obviously, as always, I've done things kind of my way, slightly different, but that's okay. Right, so I'm using some Berry Burst. This week is Berry Burst week, and if you jump onto my blog tomorrow night, stamping.com, you'll see a post at 8 p.m. our time, 8 p.m. Sydney time, that is. And I'll be taking part in a blog hop where we're featuring this beautiful colour. Alright, so just inking up your blending brush with some Berry Burst, but I'm trying to take off just the excess so that it's a really, really subtle lot of colour that I'm putting down. I don't want any splodges and blodges. I'm just centering that around where I want the butterfly stamped. So we could have as much or as little of the colour as you want there. that's enough, I think, of that. Then all we're doing is stamping the butterfly image over that sponged area. So I've used this lovely big image. This is not the biggest of the butterfly images. There's one that's even bigger, but I thought this sat nicely on you know, across that piece of cardstock. And I've got early espresso ink. So just inking that up. Oh, it's just beautiful. And then stamping. There we go. And then I'm using the Layering Leaves stamp set as well for some of the beautiful greetings on here. I love them. This is a beautiful stamp set. You'll see me use quite a bit, I think. Having said that, yeah, okay. Maybe a sending hugs. And I'm doing that in Berry Burst as well. Hopefully that's about centered. A little bit crooked, never mind. I don't think it matters when things are a little bit crooked. Then people know that they're handmade. So this one I've added an in-colour dot. It's not Berry Burst coloured, but I thought it worked anyway. But I might use some of the iridescent rhinestones for this one and pop. I'm using scissors. You could use the take your pick tool, is probably easier. There we go. So that was a really quick card, but they're so effective. It's just beautiful. They make that butterfly make such a stunning looking cards. All right, so that's the first one done already. Okay, so the second card that I'm going to share with you just steps that first card up a little bit. So I've added a layer of early espresso cardstock behind another layer of white. And then I've used the 4 square decorative masks to put some colour behind. Alright, so we've got, again, a white base, card base in thick white, and there's the early espresso layer. Okay, so just move those out of the way. Now I've used this one in my original card. So these are the 4 square decorative masks. I love them for just adding that little bit of interest. I might use a different one for this card. Maybe this one. Now I would recommend, if you're not confident with holding the mask in place, that you just add a bit of washi tape or a post-it note or something to hold it down. Okay. Again, just really subtle colour coming in from the side. I don't want to add too much colour. And you can lift it up and you can see behind. So just very subtle. And there we go. That's probably enough. I'm not even worried about whether it's covered the whole piece. I like it left with some little areas of white or very pale. Okay, then we are going to once again stamp the butterfly. I'm using the same butterfly again this time, and again in early espresso. So if you're watching, let me know where you are and whether you like this stamp set. I certainly do. It is beautiful, stunning. Okay. So you can see the different look now. Alright. So I'm going to need some adhesive. So I'm just going to grab some liquid glue. So I was very organised this morning, but I didn't have any adhesive on the table. Yep, okay. Alright, so I'm keeping this one fairly flat. Now I've made the dark layer quite small, so I think there's only a 3mm difference between this white front panel and the early espresso panel, just so that it's only a really small border that goes around. Now you could pop that up on some dimensionals, that would look great too. I send quite a few cards overseas, so I do like to keep mine as flat as possible. Not always, sometimes it's nice to have the dimensionals, but they go through the post a lot easier when they're flat. Okay, and now I'm just going to stamp. I've just got a strip of, this was just a scrap, and it's a great way to use up some of those scraps of white, which I'm sure we all have. I'm going to do a birthday card for this one. This is Sending Birthday Wishes, comes from Wildlife Wonder. This one I'm going to do in Berry Burst again. That's not very straight either. And you can see that through. Okay. I'm not going to stick that down because that's crooked. But I've got plenty of those pieces of white, so I'll just stamp it again. And then stick that one down there. Alright, so you can see how different the cards are just by adding a different, decorative mask behind the stamped image. Just completely changes it, and then a different sentiment, and they just look interesting to have those different elements on there. So that's the second card. All right. Let's move some of these things out of the way a little so we don't get confused. So that I don't get confused. Okay. And my third card is this one. And I've used, again, Berry Burst and Early Espresso, but I've added 2 more colours to it. Alright, so I've got my white card base again. and then I've got, this one is 6.5 by 6.5 centimeters, and this one is 7 by 7 centimeters, and they just layer nicely over like that. We'll come back to that, but first I'm going to stamp the background. I don't know if you've ever thought about it. I've thought about this a lot, and I often wonder why we leave the back of our cards blank when there's so much room at the back that we could just add something. So this time I've stamped the back as well as the front, and of course if you're writing on the inside you could add a butterfly there as well. So okay, so I'm going to open this out and that one ready as well. Okay, so I'm using a different butterfly for this card. It's a slightly smaller image. I've also got Fresh Freesia, Highland Heather to go with the Berry Burst. I'm going to start with some Fresh Freesia. And I do need my chamois for this one so that I can clean my stamp in between colours. Alright, so Fresh Freesia. And then really randomly stamping. So keeping in mind that you'll have the square, the main feature panel, kind of centered somewhere there. Maybe. Okay, so and then turning over to do the back. So, am I the only one who finds it hard to talk and craft at the same time? I hope not. I hope I'm not the only one. But I do find that a difficult thing to do. So, the silence is usually just me concentrating. Okay, so that was Fresh Freesia. Now I've got some Highland Heather. Highland Heather. So this one is the front. And as I was saying, I don't find it easy to stamp and talk, but then again, does it really matter? You can see what I'm doing. Alright, and doing some of the back. Maybe one more up top here. I'm just cleaning that stamp and then bringing in some Berry Burst. Okay, so I'm going to stamp it onto the main panel here. Now, if you wanted to stamp it off first and then stamp, you get a lighter colour, or if you like the darker colour, that's fine too. So let's see, this was the front. I'm going to put one overlapping a bit there, but never mind. And some on the back. That's probably just about enough. I'll pop in a wing there. Okay. So I'm happy with that. Now you could, of course, sponge. You could do all sorts of things with this. But I really wanted to keep this quite simple, so it's just some nice simple stamping. Okay. I'm going to keep the same sentiment for this one as I did for the original. So I'm using just the hello from the layering leaves and stamping that in early espresso. Okay, so I'm going to adhere this to the early espresso panel. So that it's centered and the early espresso is kind of even on all sides. Sometimes it's easier said than done, which is why I'm using glue, because that just gives you that wiggle room that I spoke about, I think, last week. Okay, so I'm actually going to pop that up on some dimensionals if I can find them. Here we go. I saw a really good tip for your dimensionals recently that you might like to keep in mind, and that is to use a highlighter or a you could use your Stampin' Blends and colour the whole back side, the sheet of these, so that this the backing that you take off is coloured, and you know when you've taken the backing off. I'm going to pop it up a bit higher this time. I had it centered on this first one, but I think, oops, I think I'm going to pop it up about there. I don't know that that's very straight. That's not too bad. Okay. Again, we could add, let's get it, take your pick this time. And let's add a couple of the iridescent rhinestones. Okay, so there we go. That's the third card done as well. So these were nice, quick and simple cards using that gorgeous Night of Flight stamp set. Let me remind you of the ones that we made today. Whoops. Where those 3 cards there. Well, I hope you've enjoyed stamping with me, and if you have any questions or would like any information, please feel free to leave a comment or get in touch with me. And remember that the card kits or the packets for these are available as a class for anyone who places an order. I've changed it a little this week so that it's just a $30 order, so that's only if you're in Australia. If you place a $30 order this week prior to midnight on Sunday, trying to think of the date, on Sunday 23rd of July, then I will send these out to you in the mail so that you can sit at home and make some cards without having to cut all the cardstock. All right, thank you for watching, and happy stamping.